So I'm just going to very quickly talk a little bit about innovation, because one of the things we found when we had these was people kind of had different thoughts about what innovation was and is and isn't. And I think too often we kind of think innovation equals new or innovation equals technology, and then we stop, right? And it's not. It's kind of, there's so much more to it. Innovation has definitions. It has methodologies you can use. It has different types. And so it seems worthwhile just talking for a quick second or two about innovation. So, in terms of definitions, I really like this one. This is from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And why I like it is because an innovation has to have traction in the marketplace. It has to have value for it to actually do anything. Otherwise, what we're looking at is an idea, and it sits in your head, and it's not an innovation. So really, if we take that an idea further and we were to make it into kind of equation, we'd want something like this. Innovation equals idea times commercialization, okay? So it has to embed into real life. And there are also different types of innovation. So we have incremental innovation, we have open innovation, radical innovation, disruptive innovation. And if we just start with incremental innovation, then, I mean, incremental innovation isn't about huge sweeping changes. It's an improvement on what you've got. You know, it's about listening and responding to your users and making something slightly better than what you had before. And we're all doing that every day, right? We all do that in our jobs. Because if we aren't, then we really should be. Because that's really about kind of churn, it's about listening, it's about adapting and evolving. We open innovation. Open innovation is quite interesting. So open innovation is about the idea that the smartest person isn't in the room right now. So how do we do that? How can we create platforms and systems that allow us to engage with other people who can bring something to the table, but also how do we share the knowledge that we have or the resources that we hold with them? And I don't know if you've heard of OpenIDEO, but OpenIDEO are a platform that kind of engage a whole global community of people to ask some big questions and to try and collaborate on finding solutions to them. So it's got a real social purpose to it. Here's something I found on the internet the other day. Wow, in space, objects float and tumble, rotate, etc., and you get the idea. So this is NASA and DARPA trying to engage a community of scientists, of technologists, of creatives to come together to look at creating algorithms that allow for autonomous catching of floating space objects. I won't be entering, but it's interesting to kind of see how this works. Then we have radical innovation. And that's my favorite. So if incremental innovation is about kind of moving along an improvement curve, about doing things slightly better, then radical innovation or disruptive innovation, it jumps curves. It's not about doing things 10% better. It's about doing them 1,000% better. It cannibalizes existing markets. It disrupts old models and services. And it challenges the embedded ways of thinking and working. So think of Uber, think Tesla, think iPad. These are examples of things that haven't just incrementally improved, they've actually jumped to a whole new curve. They're not on the same kind of line. And here's just a little example. But I like this one. I don't know if you can tell what this is, but this is these people harvesting ice. Okay, these are ice harvesters. And to have ice around 1900, you had to go somewhere really cold, and you had to chop it up, and you had to dig it out of the ground. And incremental innovation for ice harvesters probably meant stronger horses. Really strong horses who could drag that ice, you know, get more out of the ground, keep it going, okay? Or maybe it was slightly better tools. You can see the tools for ice harvesting, pretty basic. Big saws, big calipers, horses. That was kind of it. But then along came this. This is the ice factory. And I was like, wow, you know, version 2.0, you don't need to be somewhere cold to have ice. Imagine the breakthrough. This is version ice 2.0. Then we got this, the refrigerator. The refrigerator curve, 3.0, no more ice factory. And, you know, kind of, the thing that's really interesting is not one of the people in the ice factory shifted into becoming refrigerator manufacturers. They were all about improving the factory. And really, to be really radical, you have to look outside of where you are now and see the things that are coming up and think about how do we get on that curve, what's coming. So similarly, very quickly, we have the daisy wheel printer, we have the laser printer, we have the 3D printer. And each one of those is a different curve. It's kind of a radical innovation, a departure from before. And in 2014, Forbes magazine stated that 3D printing would become the transformative technology of 2015 to 25 period. And it's pretty amazing. You know, you can do this. This is a 3D printed house in China. I think 10 months before this, they were pretty much printing boxes. And this is how fast it moves. But here's an example I like that's just a little bit kind of closer to home. So this is Bailey. Bailey, until this year, was a little girl at my daughter's school, just like every other 11-year-old, with one difference. Bailey has missing limbs and she wears prosthetics. And prosthetics are kind of, you know, they're great. You know, they help you to do things. They're an adaptation. But the real problem is kids. If any of you got kids, you know how quickly they grow out of their shoes, their clothes, and it's no different when you're looking at prosthetics. And the problem with that is it means that, you know, very often kids are kind of either wearing prosthetics are either uncomfortable or they're waiting for prosthetics to come along. And Bailey's really cool because Bailey actually writes a blog, and I think when you see it in Bailey's own words, you kind of realize the impact of that on kids who need prosthetic limbs. So our 2.0 laser printer wouldn't have been able to do anything, wouldn't have been able to help Bailey. It wouldn't have made any difference to Bailey, no matter how many incremental innovations were made along the curve of the laser printer. But with version 3.0, 3D printing, Bailey was able to do this. And what's really cool about this is that Bailey didn't wait for the NHS to come along and make her a 3D printed hand. Bailey and her dad took a 3D printer, a plan of the internet, and went to somewhere with a 3D printer and a community of makers. And that place is called Does Liverpool, and it's in this city. And Bailey first made, I think it was this version, Ed? Yep. And then she iterated, and she made this. She made a better one. So she then started improving what she had. Bailey's now going, wow, I can have lights in my fists. I'm going to be the coolest kid around. And that's the reality of why innovation's important, because it's very easy sometimes to think about, you know, kind of space and, you know, technology. But the reality is it makes a real difference for people, and it gives people better control over their lives. And if there's one thing I really want to kind of get across today, is all the people who are speaking, all the people who kind of we got here on the stage briefly, are people who went, actually, there's a different way to do things, and I'm not going to wait for somebody to come along and do that for me. I'm going to take control, I'm going to take what's around me, and I'm going to do something about that myself. So that's kind of an example, I think, of radical innovation. And because this is so cheap, it costs pounds instead of thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds in some cases to kind of like make prosthetic limbs the traditional way. You know, every time Bailey grows, she can just go and adapt and 3D print herself a new hand. Disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation is kind of similar to radical, but it's kind of more staying within a similar marketplace. So a great example of disruptive innovation is Netflix. So when Netflix first came along, Blockbuster had the market. You know, if you were going to see a film on a Friday, do you remember you go and you get your Revels and you get your video, and Blockbuster pretty much had it sewn up. But one of the things about new kind of disruptors into the marketplace is they start off pretty small. And it's quite interesting because when they first come out, usually what they have is pretty crappy. So that kind of lulls the market holder into a false sense of security. They see this small, disruptive little upstart coming along with a kind of rather kind of rubbish kind of product, and they kind of just go, nothing's going to change it for us. We got the market share, look how powerful we are, and they miss that new curve that's coming. And I love this quote because in 2007, when Netflix first introduced streaming, the quality was really quite rubbish. And Blockbuster's CEO met with some of the board or whoever the important people are of Blockbusters, and they said, we can't see any reason why this new upstart technology could possibly be relevant. Nope. Here's the share prices 6 years on. Netflix totally disrupted the market, and Blockbuster didn't exist anymore. But you know, they weren't the first, so we jump right back to 1876. This is what Western Union felt about telecommunications. Basically, they wrote off telecommunications in 1876. You know, they could have been PayPal today. Ken Alston, he's a great innovator, great entrepreneur. How many of you have a computer in your own home? A few of you. Well, according to Ken, you've got no need, because Ken was so successful in the ice factory curve, he didn't appreciate the refrigerator curve. So this finally brings me to my final section, and this is really about you. And this is about innovation killers. Let's get into Halloween. I thought we should have some innovation killers. So we all probably work in organizations, no matter how large or small. Even when you're self-employed, there are some things that can happen that just kind of mess up your chances of taking that brilliant idea that's staring in the face and doing something different. Here's one of them. Here's another. And another. So usually after I do this presentation, the one thing that people kind of remember were these, and they also recognize them either as something they're guilty of or something that's impeded on their ability to innovate. But this is a new one for you. Beware the corporate antibodies. So a lot of you here don't work in small kind of entrepreneurial startups. You kind of work in large organizations. And sometimes within these large organizations, you get people who are called intrapreneurs. Intrapreneurs are basically entrepreneurs who work within large organizations, and they swim upstream, and they usually have the good ideas, and they're constantly going, but why? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this way? Can't we do this way? There's someone else. And you know, sometimes what happens is there's a special killer for them, and it's this corporate immune system. And it kills out and squashes out those good ideas. So recognizing that corporate antibodies are likely to show up at some point, you need to have strategies in place to deal with them, whether you're the entrepreneur or whether you're in a position of authority. How are you going to encourage the entrepreneurs who already exist within your organizations and help them to kind of change the status quo and take you onto that next curve? Right. What I want to do now is I want to get some more people up, but people who have also said, we want to do things differently. This is Studio Samba.